Alright, so in this video we're going to look at what I believe could be the best budget gaming mini ITX build. This is what it looks like, and in this video I'm gonna show you guys how you can build this yourself. I'm also going to show you benchmarks, how this performs in games. It's quite impressive, I gotta say. I think you guys gonna love this, and we're starting right now. Now these are some of the questions I'm going to answer in this video, and in case you want to build this PC yourself, you find all the PC parts as well as the most recent pricing down in the video description box down below. And with that said, yeah, let's put this machine together. And with this PC I wanted to try and build the cheapest and smallest PC possible. Nowadays it's actually possible to build quite a powerful gaming PC without having to burn a giant hole in your wallet. And yeah, we're gonna look at gaming benchmarks in just a second, but in case you want to go there right now, you find the timestamp for the benchmark down in the description box. Now, as we saw from the assembly, this machine doesn't have any visible graphics card. How is that possible, you may ask? Well, because we're using the integrated graphics processor that is built into the CPU, we don't need to invest in a graphics card. Now, there are a few practical benefits with that. The first one, the obvious one, is that you don't have to invest in an expensive graphics card in order to get started if you don't have the budget for it yet. And now you may be thinking, but how am I going to play games? We know that Intel graphics is not capable of running games very well. Well, it turns out that this integrated graphics, or iGPU, which we're gonna look at in just a matter of seconds, is actually powerful enough to run many games with pretty impressive frame rate. Anyway, let's start by looking at the processor. So I've already given hints to what processor brand I went with. Anyway, I chose the Ryzen 3400G, which is based on AMD's Zen Plus architecture, based on 12nm. Now you would think that since this is Ryzen 3000, the processor would be based on Zen 2 and 7nm, but unfortunately the APU lineup is half a year behind rest of AMD Ryzen family. So this is of course a bit unfortunate, and so this means effectively that we have to wait another 6 months or so until Ryzen with 7nm and Navi hit the shelves. So what we can say is that this is the latest and greatest that AMD has to offer in terms of APUs. We're still getting quite a lot of performance here. This is a 4-core and 8-thread part, clocked at 3.7 GHz and boost at 4.2. Again, it's based on 12nm, and so it's Zen Plus. It's got a TDP of 65 watts, and the breath spire cooler comes included with the processor. Now, in terms of graphics, we're getting a Radeon RX Vega 11, and this one, as the name hints, got 11 Steam processors, and the core clock is clocked at 1400 MHz. In terms of VRAM, this is what differentiates a integrated graphics from a dedicated graphics card, because integrated graphics doesn't have any VRAM at all. So how do you solve this? Well, the system is going to borrow or allocate some of the primary memory, and so what this means is that, let's say we got 8 gigs of memory, the iGPU is then going to allocate a portion of that 8 gigabytes. Now you can actually set how much you want the graphics card to allocate from the rest of the system, and this can be done in BIOS. I highly recommend having this set to 2 gigabytes, as games nowadays usually recommend that you have at least that amount of VRAM available for the system. Anyway, this got a price tag of around $138, and this APU is the perfect budget solution if you want to build a very cheap gaming PC. Alright, so let's move on and look at the motherboard. So one of the cool things with AMD is that they're supporting their sockets for a lot longer than what Intel does. So the AM4 socket was introduced back in 2017. AMD will support this to 2020, and so in case you already have an older B350 or a B450 motherboard, chances are you're gonna be able to reuse that for your next gaming PC build. In this example, I'm reusing my B350 motherboard that I purchased back in 2018. I only need to do a BIOS update and I'm ready to go. But in case you're building your first AMD system, I highly recommend the B450, as it offers a great price and performance. Now, this particular motherboard from MSI, called Gaming Plus AC, comes shipped with the latest Ryzen 3000 update. Because we don't have a graphics card, we need to plug in the display via the motherboard inside. instead. This MSI B450 comes with an HDMI as well as a single display port, and so what this allows is that you can hook up two monitors without a dedicated graphics card, which is a very powerful feature in my opinion. And keep in mind guys, not all motherboards out there have support for both HDMI and DisplayPort, and this is something that you want to have in mind in case you're gonna use the integrated graphics. What's also good with this board is that it comes with plenty of USB 3 ports as well as M.2 as well as Wi-Fi, supporting the latest AC standard, and it also got support for Bluetooth 4.2. But yeah, of course you got gigabit Ethernet if you don't want to rely on wireless. But let's say you want to upgrade later down the line and throw in a graphics card, yeah, of course you can do that as well, which is a huge benefit with a solution like this. And with that said, let's look at the memory. So I wanted to build the best bang for the buck PC, and so my first initial idea was to go with 8 gigs of RAM. However, after been testing back and forth, I ended up picking 16 gigs anyway, and there is a simple explanation for that. Because the system needs to allocate some of this system memory to the iGPU or the graphics chip, your total RAM will actually go down a bit. And so while 8 gigs of RAM might seem enough to run Windows 10 and play games, well, because the system now will borrow some of that, you are left with much less. I recommend allocating 2 gigs for the graphics, which means that we got around 6 gigs left, and running Windows 10 with just 6 GB is not a very pleasant experience. I've actually played around quite a lot comparing 16 gig versus 8 gig on the slightly older 2400G, and every time you start up a game you literally have to quit every application and everything you got up and running in the background, otherwise you're gonna run out of memory like instantly. And so while 8 gigs of RAM is technically possible, I'd actually recommend 16, and so therefore I'm gonna leave this up to you guys. If you can afford 16 gig, you definitely want to go for that, but 8 is, yeah, still possible. Now in terms of storage, which I obviously cannot spell, I'm sticking to my 240GB SSD, the A400 from Kingston. However, if you got a bit more to spend, I highly recommend 480 gig. Again, if you have room for that in your budget. I have a very good SSD listed down in the description box. And as for the power supply, I'm using this 650 watt power supply from Corsair, which is semi-modular. However, because the pricing is quite different depending on what region you're living in, I've linked up the best power supply in your country down in the description box below. So let's talk about the case. So after some contemplating, I ended up with the Node 305 from Fractal design. It comes in black and white, and as you can see I chose the white because I thought it looked slightly better. Now, first and foremost, what's so cool with this particular case is that it's so compact. It measures 250mm in width, 210mm in height, and 374mm in length. Even though it's so small, it's actually got enough clearance for graphics cards up to 310mm, although this requires you to remove 2 of the hard drive slots. Because you install the motherboard on the bottom of the case, you can fit air coolers up to 165mm, and this includes pretty much every tower out there, which is very impressive. Now, what's often is a problem with tiny cases like this is the airflow, of course. Fractal tackles this by having a dual 92mm fans from their silent R2 series, as well as a 140mm fan in the back, again from the silent R2 series, and all these 3 fans are included. Now, in terms of I/O, we're getting dual USB 3 connectors on the lower right side, as you can see, as well as dust filters on every intake area. The front is made of aluminum, and the shroud covering the top is made of a very thick aluminum, preventing as much sound as possible from leaking out of the case. And on the back, if we flip the case around, we find a fan controller so that you can control the included fans in 3 different speeds, and this is what it sounds like. One downside with the fan controller is that in order to run it, you need to feed it with a single Molex. It would have been nice if they would have upgraded this with SATA power, as Molex is starting to get pretty old by now, but yeah, it is what it is. With that said, let's look at some benchmark numbers. So before we testing the integrated graphics, let's quickly take a look at how the 2400G stacks up to the Ryzen 5 3600 when just comparing the gaming performance without the GPU limitation. Now keep in mind that there is a slight price difference between the 2400G and the 3600, and as of making this video, the 3600 is about $195 and the 3400G is 145. The 3600 is also based on the newer 7nm Zen 2 architecture, and it also got 2 more extra cores and 4 more threads. The 3600 lacks integrated graphics, and that's obviously also something to be aware of. Now at 1080p we can see that the difference here is between 15 and 30 FPS depending on what games we're looking at, which may seem like a huge number, but you have to keep in mind that the 3600 is actually one of AMD's best performing CPUs as of making this video. In terms of in-game FPS number, the 3600 offers a perfect balance between price and performance, but yeah, it does show that the CPU power from the 3400 isn't really matching AMD's newer architecture. And if we look at 1440p, yeah, well, this story repeats itself. That all said, this comparison isn't really fair, but I wanted to show you guys the difference at least, so you get a better idea of the actual gaming CPU performance and difference in case you decide to throw in a graphics card later down the line. And there is a point I'm trying to make here. If you got a few more dollars to spend, picking up, let's say, a Ryzen 3 1200 for $60 or $50 and pairing it with a Radeon RX 570 for around $120 or so, is going to give you much better performance. But again, this is only possible if your budget is not as strict. Anyway, I'll link up a great RX 570 card down below. But yeah, what we can say from testing the integrated iGPU of the integrated Vega 11 graphics is that it performs excellent in esport games that aren't that demanding. Overall, I'm very happy with this build, and I simply cannot recommend it enough to anyone that want to build a compact gaming system without burning a hole in their wallet. Now, it got plenty of options for upgrades later down the line as well. For example, you can slot in a graphics card and get much more performance in just a matter of seconds. You also got enough clearance to fit a 120 or a 140mm radiator in the back. Also, you can fit an air cooler here with up to 165mm and get even better airflow if you, let's say, want to jump on overclocking. Again, you find all the links to each PC part down in the description box below. That pretty much wraps up this video. Now, in case you have any questions, please post them in the comments. I'm gonna do my best to help you guys out. In the meantime, I think I'm gonna actually play some games on this one. I actually have a new PC project in mind for you guys. Anything in particular that you want me to take a look at, please let me know in the comments below. But thank you so much for watching this video, and watch either of these two videos for more awesome content. In the meantime, you guys have an awesome day, right?